So welcome everyone. Sorry about that little hiccup there. Welcome everyone to our weekly meeting here. This is going to be the final meeting before our summer break or mid-year break for those people that are on the other side of the hemisphere. So welcome, June 28. We're going to go through this relatively quick because Eckert is going to join us in a little bit, and he wants to take the last 5 minutes to just kind of wrap up this thing before we go for our summer break. So if you want to find out the latest information, take a look at our website, naplesmug.com. And of course, we have our groups IO. If you have any questions or anything like that, start a nice little dialogue there. And today we have Sheeta. Sheeta, would you like to add anything?
No, thank you. Go ahead.
All right. And we are going to have our last class before the midsummer break with Mike Matthews, and Mike is going to be talking about ebooks and, basically for good summer reading. Just go out on the beach or, sit outside on the deck and grab your iPad and start reading. So he's going to go over everything with, how ebooks work. And, ironically, I have a Kindle, but I bought an iPad mini, probably about a year ago to do just that. So read on my iPad. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and Mike, the floor is yours.
All righty. Thank you, Dan. Let me share my screen here real quick. Dan, I don't think I can share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Usually someone here, hold on, here's share screen.
No problem.
Can now.
And right you are.
All right. Usually I don't start the meeting. I started the meeting today, so there's,
Okay. We're fine. Okay, so you're here for this, to read about any good ebooks. This is me. This is Mike. I am in California, where we have foggy, overcast weather right now, but we are expecting a heat wave. So we'll be back in that boat with the rest of most of you, I'm sure. I just want to take a minute and talk a little bit about how this ebook market has evolved. Most of us, I think, are familiar with Amazon. They started as a purveyor of traditional books, and they've added ebooks along the way. Apple also sells ebooks through their bookstore, which is part of the Books app.
Hey, Mike. There it is. Never mind. I just saw a black screen, so I was jumping ahead there.
That's okay. So these two are probably the main purveyors of ebooks, commercially anyway. And they each have an app that you can run on the iPad or the iPhone, or I think maybe even the Mac. Apple's Books app is on the left. The Kindle app icon is on the right. They're also both heavily involved in audiobooks. For that, Apple uses its Books app, and for Amazon ebooks or audiobooks you purchase from Amazon, you use the Audible app. Audible used to be an independent company, which Amazon purchased. But both of them have their own little ecosystems for ebooks and audiobooks. I'm going to really focus only on Apple's product today, the Books app. It's built into the Apple device screen, I guess, except for the watch. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if the Books app is actually forming or performing three roles at once. It's used to read books, and you can also use the Books app to store PDF files if you like. You can also use it to listen. And you use the Books app to buy books and audiobooks in a bookstore. So unlike the App Store or the iTunes Store, which are kind of separate entities for purchasing things from Apple, anything you buy ebook related from Apple or audiobook related from Apple comes through the Books app. It's all one great big app. So what I'm going to do now is switch over to my iPad. I'm figuring that most of you are probably not balancing an iMac on your lap, or maybe even a laptop on your lap to read a book in Apple's Books app. You're probably using a mobile device like an iPad or an iPhone. So I'm going to use the iPad today because it's just got a little bit of a bigger screen. But the functions of the Books app is really the same across all of Apple's devices. Obviously, the interface is going to be a little bit different for each device. In the case of the difference between the iPad and the iPhone's got a little bit more of a compressed interface as a result of the screen, but I think we'll probably be just fine. So if you're following along on an iPhone, you probably won't get lost. If you're following along on an iPad, you'll be right at home. So let me try to create a share of my iPad screen. And we will go from there. So here we are. And let me turn my little laser pointer on. And I thought we would start by taking a look at the settings for the Books app. It's really pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead on my iPad and tap the Settings app. And just scroll up on your screen quite a ways till you get to the little media section of settings, and you'll find an option for books. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of these settings because they're really pretty straightforward, but I do want to highlight a couple that are worth talking about. One is purchases from other devices. You can set up your devices so that when you buy a book from Apple's Books app on one device, it will automatically download on another device. So in this case, I have this switch turned off on my iPad, which means if I buy a book using my Mac or my iPhone, it will not download to the Books app on the iPad automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on because I want it to be on. I frequently will be looking through the Books app on my phone, see a book I want to buy. I can buy it on the phone. And with this switch on, I'll automatically download that same book to the iPad, no additional charge. A little bit further here, there's some settings for syncing. There's a feature of the Books app that will keep track of the books you're reading through. It's in what's called the Reading Now section. We'll see that in a few minutes. So if I turn this switch on for Reading Now, as I read books on either device, what I'm reading will stay in sync in the Reading Now section across devices through my iCloud account. In addition, turn on iCloud Drive here. This will allow you to sync PDFs that you add to your library on either device. And I think one of the last things I want to talk about here is called reading menu position. If you've used the Books app in the past, you may know that it's undergone quite a bit of interface change in the last 3 to 4 years. And it went through another change again this past year with the use of this reading menu, which has consolidated a lot of the controls that used to be along the top of the screen into one menu, which you can locate on either the left or the right-hand lower corners of the screen. This is particularly handy if you're reading a book on a phone. You can hold the phone in one hand and access a lot of the reading controls just by using this reading menu in one corner of the screen, close to your thumb. So you can make your choice about which corner you want to use for the reading menu, and we'll talk more about those details in a minute. A little bit farther down, you might want to take a look under the reading section for both margins advance. Typically, when you turn pages in the book that you're reading in the Books app, you'll tap either the right-hand margin to turn the page to the next page of the book, or you'll tap the left-hand margin to move the page to the previous page in the book. If you're not interested in doing that, you can actually turn this switch on and allow a tap on either the left or right margin to go to the next page. So the back page tap won't work. And for all of you skeuomorphic fans out there, midway through the iPad OS 16 upgrade cycle, Apple returned the page turn curl animation to the Books app. You can, if you don't like that, you can choose to have the pages just slide in and out of the screen or have no animation at all. But the curl is kind of cool, so I have that selected in my case. And one last thing I'll mention here is reading goals. You can use the Books app to set a goal for how many minutes a day you want to read. And every time you open up the Books app, that timer starts. So if you'd like to keep track of reading goals, you can turn that switch on. If that doesn't interest you, you can just go ahead and turn it back off again. So that's kind of a quick look at some of the more important Books settings features. that are in the Books setting in the Settings app. I also want to mention one other thing, and that has to do with iCloud settings related to books. So I'm going to go back to the very top of the settings screen and tap my name and tap iCloud. And in this group of settings, if you want to have things like bookmarks you set in a book or notes you take in a book, synchronize between the devices you're reading a book on, then you should turn on iCloud Drive, make sure this iPad switch is turned on. And under these apps using iCloud options, after you tap Show All, scroll up a little bit and make sure that Books is turned on as well. So doing so will allow you to synchronize things like bookmarks, highlights, notes between the devices you're reading the same book on through your iCloud account. Any questions about any of those settings? I know the handout I gave you has a much longer description of each of those options, but I just wanted to kind of hit the high points here for purposes of this discussion.
Mark Blackman may have a question that applies. Mark, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, under the Apple audio books, if you download one, can you get it to an iPod into Apple Music, or does it just stay in the other book format, like that might be on your iPad or Mac?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Apple changed the iTunes app quite a while ago to break out podcasts and other things away from music and just kind of left music as the only thing the music app is really supposed to be doing. But if you have an iPod, I think you probably will end up syncing it probably either wirelessly or with a wire from your Mac to the iPod. I don't have an iPod anymore. Does the iPod have a Books app on it? The iPod Touch probably does, right?
I don't know. I have to pull it up. Can't remember how it comes up.
You have an older iPod, not a non-iPod?
Yeah, it's an older one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you probably could sync. I'm just going to guess here. I think you probably could sync that audiobook by connecting the iPod to your Mac and using the usual sync mechanism, either through the Finder or through iTunes if your Mac is really old.
Okay.
That'd be my guess. But that's your homework, Mark. Report back to the group in 3 months.
All right, thank you. All right, all yours.
Okay. So I think what I'll do now that we're done with settings, I'm just going to jump out of the settings app. And I've got the Books app down here in the dock. So I'm going to give that a tap. And you'll see the reading focus has just been turned on. That's fine. Over here on the left-hand side of the iPad app, there's a sidebar. If you've got an iPhone, you're not going to see a sidebar because the screen is so small. You'll see a lot of buttons at the bottom of the screen that can give you access to these same sorts of features. But I think we'll just kind of take this in chunks, and we'll start with this Reading Now choice here in the sidebar. So Reading Now keeps track of the books you are reading currently and recently. And so I've got a wide collection of computer manuals here. This is how I fall asleep at night sometimes. But most of these are user guides from Apple's bookstore. And there's a few other things in here as well. So the Reading Now area, if you take a look at this cover shot, say for this iPad user guide, you'll notice I'm allegedly 19% of the way through the book. That's really not true. I'm hopping around in it as it were. But over here on the right, there's a little button with 3 dots on it. That's called the More button. And if you give that a tap, you'll get a list of options that you can do with this particular book. So for example, you can share details about the book with somebody else. You can add it to a section called Want to Read, or drop it into a collection, which we'll talk about in a bit. You can rate and review the book. If you're cruising around Apple's bookstore looking for things to read, the bookstore is going to want to keep track of what you're looking at, where you're going, what you're interested in. And you can use things like suggest more books like this or suggest fewer books like this to the recommendation engine that's built into the Books app. So any of these books that you see here have this More button to the lower right-hand corner, and you can just go ahead and tap that to get some options for that particular book. So if you want to read a book, you just tap the cover. You'll see a splash screen for the cover, and then you'll be into the book. When I'm holding my iPad in this landscape orientation, I'm seeing 2 pages at a time, kind of like a traditional book. But if I turn the iPad into a vertical orientation, I just see 1 page at a time. So you can hold the iPad either way, whatever's convenient for you, and see 1 page or 2 pages at a time. Again, if I want to turn the page, I can just tap in the right-hand corner, or I'm sorry, the right side of the screen to go to the next page. Or I can tap in the left edge, left margin to go back. I can also just swipe on the screen with my finger if I want to, and I can see that nice curl effect, forward or back. Okay. If you want to get access to the reading menu, you can simply tap the screen, tap an open portion of the screen, and you'll see in the lower right-hand corner of my book, there's the reading menu. It disappears after a few seconds if you don't tap it right away. And we're going to talk about the reading menu in pretty good depth here in a minute. And in the upper right-hand corner, when you tap the screen, the little X in the right-hand corner closes the book and takes you back to this main screen. Okay. There used to be a whole bunch of different interface elements on the screen with the Books app, but they've all really been consolidated into this little reading menu down in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm going to give that a tap. And when I do, all of these things are like right within a thumb's reach. So the very first thing you'll see here is the Contents button. And it's got this nice two-tone look to it to tell me how far through the book I am. 19%, as I said earlier, which isn't exactly true. I can actually, whoops, if I tap the Contents button, I'll see a table of contents for the book. And I can jump to any chapter just by tapping it. And I can also move quickly through the book by swiping on this button. And as I do, as I get close to the first page of a chapter, this little menu above is showing me where in the book I am. So now if I let go with my finger, I'll be at the accessories section. And that little vertical bar you see there is where you were before you started scrolling around on this Contents button. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, you can highlight text in the book. You can bookmark things in the book. Tapping this Bookmarks and Highlights button will show you bookmarks that you have set inside the book, and tapping any one of these will take you to that page. So for example, I could tap Magnifier, and I'll go right to that page. You'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little bookmark icon showing me that I've bookmarked this page. Same is true with highlights. If you decide to highlight text within your book, and I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes, the list of highlights will show up here, and you can again tap any list of any item listed in the highlights section to go to that highlight right in your book. And bookmarks and highlights will sync through iCloud as long as you turn on the books setting for iCloud and iCloud Drive setting within your devices.
Mike?
Yeah.
Jerry Schultz has a question I think that is appropriate for right now. Jerry,
right.
can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, I had used the Books app for years until I got fed up with the fact that I would take notes and make highlights in it. And then behind my back, Apple would, the publisher would release, a book, and I believe most of these were just minor edits to books. But with those minor edits, then I would lose the position of all of my bookmarks, my notes, and my highlights. So when I would go to the highlights menu and tap on it to try to go back to that position, it was it wouldn't go anywhere. It would always just send me to the front of the book.
Really?
So I switched to the Kindle app because Kindle saves more grains. Anyhow, Kindle saves the location, and then even if the book gets updated, at least when you tap on it, it gets you in the vicinity as opposed to just sending you back to page 1 all the time. And so I just, like I said, so I switched to buying all my books from Amazon a few years back for that reason. I have a couple hundred books in iBooks, but I just had to get flat up on it because that interface was terrible.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well,
Have you
yeah,
tried that lately? Have you tried that lately? See if they fixed that?
No, I'd not, and that was part of my question: is has that been fixed? Because I don't like to keep switching. I would like to have all my books in. That's another complaint about e-reading, is that I would, independent from all of this, is that I wish that manufacturers would let us read in our own app, rather than we are stuck with the seller's app. But that's a separate story.
Right.
But I get used to reading on the Kindle, and I don't want to keep switching apps all the time, so I want to keep my books in one app. And if that app fails me, then I'll go to another app.
Yeah, perfectly understandable.
May I interrupt, Mike? I might have an answer.
Yeah, I do.
I've published a few books in the bookstore, and it's the way that I understand it, and I could understand it wrong. The bookstore allows you to buy books outside of the bookstore. So
Now,
you
these
might
are all from
purchase
Apple
it.
books.
Those
All from Apple books.
all from Apple Books. Oh, then
All from Apple books.
it should remember all that stuff, because that was the way that I understood it. It remembers it if you purchase through the bookstore. If you didn't purchase it through the bookstore and you download it, then like if I send an update, it erases everything.
No,
But
these were
I could
all.
be okay. All right.
Jerry,
I guess I don't have an answer.
how long ago did you switch? When was this happening?
Oh, like I said, it's been a few years. I do
Okay.
not know. I do not know exactly when.
Okay, so there is a possibility that this issue could have been resolved. There's a possibility that not. So if anyone who's been reading recently has experienced an issue like this, let us know in the chat. All right. All right. With that, we're going to send you on, Mike. Go ahead. Thank you,
Okay.
Jerry.
Mhm.
Yep, thanks for bringing that up. I was not aware of that. Okay, so let me go back to the menu at the corner of the screen, bookmarks and highlights. There's also a search button here. You can search for anything in the book. Now, with this Apple user guide, if I were to search for the word iPad, I would get a gazillion hits. But if you're reading the great works of William Shakespeare, perhaps you're looking for a particular quote in a particular play, then using the search field by just tapping the search button might be pretty helpful. So you can also go to a page number. You can type in a word. So if I want to go to, say, I want to go to accommodate and see if the word happens to be in the book. Here we go. A free-form board automatically accommodates any item you place on it with a margin. Okay, so if I tap one of these entries, it will take me right to that page and highlight the word that I'm looking for down here at the bottom. Next up, there's a button here called Themes and Settings. And this button now combines a whole bunch of different things that used to be separate buttons in previous versions of the Books app. Down here along the bottom, there's a collection of 6 different types of themes. And these vary in terms of the background color of the Books app and the type of font you're using, serif or non-serif, bold or not bold. But you can tap any one of these to change the theme of this book. So if I'm interested in having kind of a bluish screen with bold type, I can pick the one that's called bold. If I want something with kind of a lighter background and a thinner font, I can pick that. If I want something calmer, I can do that. You can pick any one of these that you like. And once you've picked a theme, there's an options button up here next to the theme you've selected. You can actually go in and change the font to something different if you want. So if you don't want Palatino, you can pick some other font that's available. You can also decide to make it bold. You can also customize accessibility and layout options. So for example, you can make the line spacing a little bit bigger. And up above here, you're seeing kind of a demonstration of what this is going to look like if you adjust these settings: character spacing, word spacing, adding space between words. You can also choose to turn on full justification, which makes a straight left and right margin when you're reading. And you can also allow multiple columns if you like. So even though you see here 6 different kind of preset themes, you can go in and customize each of those to pick a font that you like better if you like. You can also, on the fly, make the font smaller or larger. So for example, if I tap this little A button, it's going to immediately make the font smaller. If I tap the big A button, it's going to make the font larger. So you could, if you have difficulty reading, you can make that font as big as you'd like. And then when you're done, you can tell your friends that you completed reading a 4,000-page book, if you like. You can also, with these larger and smaller fonts, pick a different font style as well, if you like. Next to this button here is a button that takes away pagination, essentially. Tapping this little vertical scroll button changes the way you read a book through vertical scrolling. So the concept of pages now no longer exists, right? I'm just scrolling up and down to read, which some people might find easier to do, say, holding an iPhone with one hand, for example. Just scroll with your thumb instead of turning pages. This button right here affects the page turning animation, slide, curl, or none. And this dark mode button over here allows you to choose to always read this book with light mode, always read it with dark mode, match whatever the device settings are. Most of you probably know you can turn dark mode on your iPad or your iPhone based upon time of day or any other schedule you choose to set. Or you could just match the surroundings. So if you're in a room that's relatively dark, then the iPad will kind of turn down the brightness a little bit to match the surroundings, if you like. So that's the themes and settings button. The last 2 on the page are the share button. Tapping this will allow you to share through the usual ways, let's say through mail, information about this book you're reading, along with a link to the bookstore. And the bookmark button down here in the corner, if you tap this, that adds a bookmark to this particular page that you're looking at. So that's pretty much everything underneath this new reading menu button. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I don't have the share button and the bookmark button on that themes. Oh no, hold on. Let me check this again. Let me check. I have it. Sorry. Never mind.
Okay.
All right. No, I don't see any. Yes, Betsy Kramer, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
She doesn't have a
Betsy's-
microphone.
Okay, Betsy's question is there a setting that optimizes a font or the screen for reading outside? Or would something like something paper-like? Okay, I sort of don't understand that last sentence, but is there a setting that optimizes a font for the screen for reading outside?
I think if you mean reading outdoors, like in bright sunlight, iPads are going to have
Possibly.
that. Phones are going to have trouble with that. Kindles are much better
Mhm.
at that because of the
Mhm.
style of screen that they have. So you're really kind of stuck with the way the iPad screen is going to react to bright sunlight, for example. I don't think
Okay.
that, I think that the iPad will try to react to ambient light around it. And if it's really, really bright outside, what should happen is the screen should get brighter in bright light. But I have to admit, I'm not sure that always does happen. But I don't think there's not a setting in the Books app for something like that, I don't think. But there might be something in the general settings app you could take a look at if you wanted.
I find that if you're outside, if you want to read, the iPhone does a much better job of doing that than the iPad. The iPhone can get so bright it hurts my eyes sometimes.
And what I will do for as a good tip in the sunlight is invert it. Is that how you say that?
Mhm.
So it's
Yes.
white text on black background.
Yes.
When you're on the iPad, makes it so much easier. I actually have a Kindle that I use as well, which allows me to do that. And now that's my standard way of reading because it's like you're saying, Sheeta, not so bright, but it does
Right.
work in sunlight. So people could try that.
Oh, all right. We have two other questions. Stan, you're first, and then Frank, you're after Stan. Stan, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes. What was my question?
Your question is, can you move Kindle books to the Books app?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like books better than Kindle, the reverse of the previous person, and would love to be able to get those books into the Books app because Kindle doesn't do the right thing for me. Or can they be moved? Is there a way to get them?
I want to say, I don't use the Kindle app, but I want to say that as one of the earlier, I think Mark or somebody said earlier, there's a proprietary format that these apps may be using. Now, having said that, EPUB files, which is kind of an open format, are definitely readable in the Books app. And they're probably also Kindle. So if you get an EPUB file from Kindle, then you probably can get it into the Books app on the iPad. But I have to confess, I don't know how to get an EPUB file out of the Kindle app because I don't use the Kindle app. But there should
Can I add something about DRM?
Well,
Who's that?
EPUB particularly doesn't have DRM attached to it.
Well, all of Apple's books are EPUBs that have DRM attached.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, news to me.
So just because it's an EPUB doesn't mean it's readable in books.
Okay. All right. That's helpful.
Okay. All right. Frank, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, I was wondering, I prefer to read 3 or 4 books at the same time. The Apple app isn't very friendly to me doing that. I mean, I can't keep a book open and then go to another book very easily. If I have a book open, I'm either reading it or I have to close it and then see what the library is, because I like to go through my library and satisfy whatever urge that stimulates for me to read.
Are you on an iPad only when you say that, Frank?
No, I'm actually in the phone.
Okay, because I know on my computer I can have multiple books open at once.
Well, yeah, but how do you switch?
You click on the one that you can go to the menu to cycle through them, or I don't usually have them sitting on top of one another, so I just click on the window that I want.
Yeah,
Right.
me too.
Yeah,
But
the iPhone screen is only going to show you one app at a time. So trying to read 2 books on the iPhone isn't going to work. I was just doing a little test here to see if I could open up the Books app side by side in split view, and I don't think you can do that either. So for example, if I try to go into split view with the Books app and then add the Books app as the second app to be viewed, it just won't let me do it. So I can't do books side by side like I can do Safari side by side.
Well, I
Mac,
don't
you
need
have
that
multiple
so
windows
much.
open.
I need an ability for the Apple Books app to, wherever I am in a book, take me back to the library.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
When if I have a book open,
Right?
I can't on my iPhone, I can't see any way I can tap back into the library.
Yeah, you got to close the book. That should take you back to the library.
What?
You have to close the book. That should take you back to the library. Just like if I close this book that's on the screen now,
Mhm.
I go back to this view.
Okay. So the only way is to close it. In the
Yeah.
Kindle, you can go anytime
Okay.
and leave the book open to the page you're at. So it doesn't do it. I read Kindle now because I can do that, just because
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
All right, Mike, all yours.
Okay. So that's kind of the first part of the Reading Now tour, where Reading Now will keep track of recent books I've been reading or recent audiobooks I've been listening to, show me the current book and recent items as well. If I scroll up a little bit more under Reading Now, there's a section here called Want to Read. These are books you want to read next. These might show up here by virtue of you're having downloaded a book from the bookstore, or you browse to the bookstore and you add it to the Want to Read list. Some of these books here that you're seeing are actually on my device, like this Andrew Jackson American Lion book is actually on the device. I haven't started it yet. Other books are on my Want to Read list, but they're not actually on the device. That's what this little cloud icon down here underneath the icon for The Godfather means. It's added to my list. It's just not on my device at the moment. One of the features of the bookstore that we're going to take a look at is the ability to download a sample. It's kind of like standing in the aisles at Barnes & Noble for 20 minutes and reading through the first several pages of the book. You can download samples of a book and they can show up down here. As I mentioned earlier, the book recommendation engine will make recommendations to you about books you might want to read, as well as audiobooks you might want to listen to. Those will show up down here. Here's a list of current bestsellers. And look, we're only 1 minute away from our reading goal, only because I've kept the app open for 19 minutes, right? As soon as I hit the reading goal, I'll get a nice blue dot here for Wednesday. The reading section will also keep track of books you've read this year. So I have a very modest goal of 5 books. I've done with 4. I'll probably hit that goal for the very first time. But that's the Reading Now section, a collection of things you're reading now, want to read later, recommendations, and tracking these reading goals. Any questions about that?
None.
Okay, one other thing on this screen I want to mention is up in the upper right-hand corner here, there's a picture of my face, which I apologize for profusely. This is actually a button. It takes you to your account info. So if you tap up here in the corner where you may see your photo, or you may see your initials, or you may see a silhouette of a human head, this actually takes you to your account. And in here, you'll find places to download updates, a list of books you've purchased, broken down by category if you're interested in that. Also books that are not on this iPad, for example. We have family sharing turned on in our house. So anybody who buys a book within our family, anybody else can go in and download it for free. So for example, if I want to look through my wife's collection of books, I might find some fantasy books, some paranormal books. My wife reads paranormal books. I didn't know that. More fantasy stuff, I think. And this is where you can also redeem gift cards and the like. The key part of this account button really is probably the updates section, where if a book gets updated, and again, it might be very, very minor changes. In the case of many of the books that I read, these are Apple user guides and they frequently get updated. So if you ever need to update a book, you can just kind of tap the account button, look for updates, and tap the button to update them if there are any available. So that's the account button. Next over here on the left is a library section. And this is where all of your books and audiobooks are listed, whether they're on your device or not. I want to take a minute here to talk about audiobooks for just a second. This little square down here that's supposed to look like a CD box, I guess. This is an example of an audiobook. Here's another one over here, the time machine. If you want to listen to an audiobook, you can just tap it. It will open up a little playback interface, very similar to what you see in a lot of audio playback apps. We've got a timeline going on down here. We have a play button.
Hostages could be dead.
We have a skip back and skip ahead button. So if you want to go back and listen to something again, you can tap the go back 15 seconds button or go forward 15 seconds button. Down below in the lower left-hand corner, there's a playback speed button. Currently, this book is playing back at 1x speed, normal speed, but you can tap that button and either speed it up, depending on how slowly these people read. Sometimes speeding up is a good thing, or you can slow it down a little bit, just slightly below 1x if you need to. Some people like to fall asleep to listening to audiobooks. You can use this little sleep button down here to do that. And you can say, I want you to read this book to me for a certain amount of time, or just until the current chapter ends, or maybe some other custom length of time you want. And you can choose where you want this audio output to go, whether it's going to go to a HomePod in the room or to some other device that's nearby using AirPlay. And the lower right-hand corner will show you tracks that are available within this one section of the book. So it's a pretty straightforward process. There's also a more button over here on the right. You can give that a tap. And you have similar options that you have with ebooks, where you can add things to collections, you can mark them as finished, you can ask for more or less suggestions like this book. In this case, this audiobook has not been downloaded to my device, so I could tap the download button to download this to the device and play it from the device, and therefore I would not need to have an internet connection to hear it. So if you're getting on a plane with a bunch of audiobooks, you might want to make sure that the books are actually on your device so you don't incur any Wi-Fi fees. To reduce this large interface down to a smaller size, there's a little handle up here at the top, this little gray bar. Just swipe that down a little bit. And you'll have a very compact playback interface down at the bottom for listening to a book just by tapping the play button or the skip buttons in the corner. Very similar to the music app, if you've used that at all. So having talked about that, in the library is divided into a whole bunch of different sections. This is everything in my library at the moment. And there are sections for want to read, finished, books, audiobooks. I mentioned earlier, PDF files can go in here. These are a bunch of take control manuals. You may have seen these online. This is the PDF version of these books. And there's also samples and things that you've downloaded to your library.
Question for you.
Go.
All right, David Winograd, can you please unmute your mic and ask your question?
Yeah. If you buy the audiobook and the ebook at the same time, is there a way to play the audio and have the text follow along as you can on the Kindle app?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't seen that, actually. That's a nice feature, though.
Yeah, I find especially for technical things, that's quite helpful.
Yeah, you know, it could be. Let me mention one thing, and this is really kind of kludgy, but I think you can probably select some text in an ebook and have it spoken to you, but it's not going to do the whole book, right? It's just going to speak whatever text you highlight, and I don't think it's going to go much beyond the page either. I don't think I can stretch this selection beyond the page. So you could maybe switch the book into kind of the scrolling view. And then you could maybe not select some text, but I still can't get beyond the edge of this page. So I don't think that feature exists in the Books app. Unless somebody else has discovered it.
No, David, I have a question. Are you saying that both the books and the audiobook are combined, or are you saying it's just like reading a transcript of the book?
No, I'm saying they're combined, word for time. So the audiobook is being highlighted on the Kindle. The words are as the book is being read, is being read to you.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
And usually if you buy the book, they sell you the audiobook at like a 1/3 price discount.
Mhm.
And also if you just read the book for a while and then you want to come back to the audio part, it's automatically synced. So you can go between the book and the audio back and forth and it stays in sync.
Okay. James Corsica, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Mike, this is a question about the skip forward, skip back buttons on audiobooks. I discovered quite by accident recently in a podcast that that's a user adjustable setting as to how much the skip is. I found it to be too short in this podcast and discovered I could increase it to 30 or 45 seconds. Is it adjustable in the audiobooks portion of the Books app?
Yeah, that was one of the settings we didn't discuss. So if you go to Settings, Books, and you scroll up here, you'll find options for skip forward and skip back. So you can do anywhere from 10 to 60 seconds for each of them. And they can be different, right? You can say, I want to be able to skip forward 60 seconds, but skip back 15, say. Doesn't have to be
very nice. That's kind of liberal.
yeah, doesn't have to be the same number, but yeah, those are customizable as well.
All right, thanks.
All right. Giovanni, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Take control PDF books on my own folder. Is there a way to import those books to the iBook?
Which kind of books are they again?
The Take Control.
Take Control books. I think that if you have bought a Take Control book from the Take Control folks, and you have an account with them, I think you can download the book in one of several formats. I know PDF is there. I know
EPUB they have PDF, EPUB, yes.
Yeah, I think you can probably just go back and re-download it in the PDF format, and then you can store that in the Books app if you want.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they're going to charge you again to download the same book in another format. I don't think.
No, they won't.
Yeah, give that a try. These are all what you're looking at here. These are all PDFs. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, Mike, you made a comment about, you'll read a book and you'll fall asleep. Is there a way to keep track of when you fall asleep so you know where you left off?
Well, if it's an ebook, not an audiobook, I don't generally try to fall asleep to audiobooks, but if it's an ebook and I fall asleep and like I'm holding the iPad in bed and the iPad hits me in the nose, then I know it's time to put the book down and go to sleep. So when you close the iPad up, or you close the app, or you close the book, it retains where you were when you left off. So, for example, if I go back to reading now and I reopen this iPhone user guide book, it's going to take us right back to where we left off.
Okay, all yours.
Okay. So let's go back to this section called collections. You can kind of think of collections as like a bookshelf. I don't know if any of you are as anal as I am, but do you store all your science fiction books on one shelf and all your fiction books on the other and all of your history books on another? You can create collections and then just put these books into these collections so you can find them more easily. So for example, I've got one here called Take Control that I put all of the Take Control books in. I have another one called Classics where I put all the classics in. One thing I'll mention about these classic books, a lot of these books that are now outside of copyright are all available on various bookstores. You can download them for nothing and read them whenever you like. So you can add books to a collection very, very simply. You can just look at all of your books. And let's suppose I wanted to take this Woody Allen Zero Gravity sample. If I tap the More button in the lower right-hand corner beneath the cover of the book, I can see I can add this book to a collection. My list of collections will appear, and I can just tap one of these to add it there, or even on the fly, I can create a new collection if I like. So if I wanted to create a collection called humor, for example, I could just tap new collection, give it a name, and tap. And now I've added not only a new book to a collection, I've actually added the collection down here at the bottom. So all the humor books are right there. If you want to just add a new collection straight out, just use the new collection button at the bottom, and you'll get an empty collection area over here, and you can just type in whatever you want. Let's call this one math. And now I have a new collection called math that I can add books to. One thing you can do on the iPad, if you're looking at all of your books, let's pretend that this What's Our Problem book is a humor book. I could just touch and hold this book and drag it right into the collection like that, if that's easier for you. So now my humor collection has got two things in it. Okay. Now, once you have a collection here, you can, for example, with these Take Control books, I can sort these by title, author, manually, or recent. I can choose to look at them in a list view instead of in a kind of a cover view. And I can tap the edit button in the corner to select these books. Let's say, for example, I want to select this book at the bottom, the Mac command line with terminal. I could then trash it from here, add it to a collection from here, share information about it using the share button in the lower right-hand corner. If I wanted to pick several books at a time and I wanted to throw them all away, I can do that with one fell swoop, or I can add them to a collection using the Add To button. So you've got wide control of how you want to organize your books if you like to, with as many categories as you want. In fact, you can, when you're looking at this sidebar view on the left, if you tap the edit button at the top of the sidebar view, you can also remove collections from here, which is not going to delete the books themselves, just the collection that exists. It's kind of like deleting a playlist in the music app. You're not deleting the music, just the playlist. And you can reorganize these if you like by just dragging, using this little gripper handle to move these things up or down. And that's collections. Any questions about that?
No questions.
Great. So next, let's go back to the sidebar here. We'll take a look at the bookstore. This is very similar to other stores that Apple has. Lots of suggestions here. If you want to get information about a book, you just give it a tap. So I'm just going to go in here to James Patterson, Fear No Evil. I give that a tap. I can see some ratings and reviews. I can buy the book from here. I use either Face ID or my Apple ID username and password to buy it. I can add it to Want to Read. I can download a sample. I can gift the book to somebody else by using the little gift button in the upper right-hand corner. And with the More button, I've also got some suggestions here too. I can scroll up and see some reviews, other books in the series, etc., etc., etc. So very, very similar to all the other stores that Apple has. You use your Apple ID to pay for stuff like this. You can get previews, ratings and reviews, all the usual stuff. The bookstore also is broken down by genre, if you like. You can also use the Browse Sections button in the corner. So if you are used to wanting to see, books that are coming soon, books that the bookstore group loves, or you can go into specific genres to look for exactly what you're looking for, like maybe a history book of some kind. Let's see what the bookstore is pushing today. The worst military leaders in history. Okay, that's good. And other bestsellers. The audiobook store works pretty much the exact same way, except instead of ebooks, you're looking for audiobooks. So it's the exact same concept. Books for you, new and trending. You can browse sections. You can pick an example. You can download a preview to your device to listen to it, add it to want to read, buy it. All the same stuff that we've seen with ebooks really applies to audiobooks as well. No great surprises there. And there's a search button over here on the left where you can search for anything, really. Put in authors' names, titles, whatever it might be. So if I put in here Tolkien, I will get some top results from the bookstore. If I'm interested in getting this book, this is an audiobook. Here's The Hobbit, for example. And the usual purchase process is available from there. Now, the last thing I want to cover very briefly has to do with PDF files. And how do you get PDF files into the Books app? Somebody sends you a PDF file, you want to hang on to it, put it in the Books app. So let's suppose I've got some email in here and I've got a PDF file attached to it. So I'm just going to go in here and find some file. Here is something. So here is a email that has several PDF files in it, and they're very busily downloading, I hope. Come on. Well, let's try again. Don't you love it when things go wrong during a live demo?
Trial by fire all the time.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try it. Let's try this. Okay, so here's an example of a PDF file. I can just touch and hold this, he said optimistically. Hold on. Let's try it another way. Things are misbehaving. I'll just describe it to you rather than spend more time failing. You can touch and hold a PDF file that you receive, and a pop-up menu will appear that will allow you to add it to the Books app. So in the share sheet that shows up, there'll be a little Books icon. You tap that, and it will add the PDF to your Books app. So in my case, I got a lot of PDFs over here. Here's an example of these are the NCAA rules for four-year transfers. I'm sure you're interested in something like this. But I can read this PDF file right on the screen. I can make it bigger or smaller by pinching. I can also tap this PDF file, and now I have the ability to use the markup tools up here in the upper right-hand corner to draw on this item with my finger if I want to, using any of these tools that are available. So you can get a PDF file into the Books app, as I described, but couldn't show you. And then you can mark up the file if you like, using the markup tools that are built into iPadOS. And that's all I know about the Books app. And I got to tell you, I learned more about the Books app from you guys than I ever knew, especially about the Kindle app. Any other last minute questions?
Absolutely. Keith Kaiser, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Good morning. Nice presentation. Quick question about sharing books. Can we share books between my wife and I?
If you do family sharing, which I highly recommend, then any purchases you make from Apple's bookstore are shareable for free with other people in your family. So that's what I would recommend for that. Otherwise, if you have separate Apple IDs and your wife wants to read the same book, she's going to have to download it again with her Apple ID and pay for it a second time. So turn on family sharing, which is in the Settings app.
Thank you very much. We are all set. We are family sharing.
And once you do that, make sure you turn on purchase sharing down here at the bottom.
Okay.
I will check it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay.
All right, John Levy, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thanks for a great presentation. Just a question. On a PDF file, if I'm not using, does Acrobat essentially do the same thing that books would do here?
Probably Probably that and more, be my guess. The Acrobat app is really devoted solely to PDF files and manipulating PDF files and doing things with PDF files. It probably does with PDF files way more than the Books app will do.
Thank you.
Okay,
Books app
Frank,
is designed to let you read PDF files and maybe do some markup on them. That's really pretty much about it.
in what aspect would you want Acrobat to interact with that book? Just a question.
Cheetah, I wasn't. I just it just seemed to me that I was just asking to make sure that I could do what Mike was suggesting in Acrobat. I already use Acrobat.
Yes, yes, you can. Okay, as he said, yes, you can. All right. Sorry, Frank, you had a question. You had your mic open.
Yeah. Does the Books app of Apple accept graphic novels which behave in specific ways, like when there's one page has different pictures on it and captions and stuff, and usually tapping, if you're doing it through the agency that's selling it, but tapping will allow you to get a close-up of the smaller picture on that page and then go back to the larger, and it behaves differently, a graphic novel. Have you any experience with that, or if it works?
I have not had any experience with that, but I will tell you that if you're looking through a book that you get into the Books app from the bookstore, like this graphic over here on the left, if I tap that, it'll make the graphic bigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's the case with any graphics in any of these books, right? Graphic novels, I don't have any of those here, but I know there are, like, is there an app called Comixology or something like that? That's reading comic books and things. I have a feeling that, I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling that those apps are really probably more suited for what you're thinking about. I've never really used one very much, but you can like tap on a panel, it will expand to take up the entire screen, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. Let me take a look at something real quick. If we go to the bookstore, let me just do a search maybe for graphic novels. Well, I got one in my library here. This is a Batman one. And so I tap a panel. I'm going to just tap this very first panel up here in the upper left-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not getting much different here. It's not, I mean, I can zoom like this. I can do pinching to zoom, but tapping that panel is not like making the panel show up, filling the screen, right? So there might be some better solutions for that out there, but we're not seeing it here in the Books app with this particular graphic novel, at least. Now, it could be that maybe there is functionality built in to building a graphic novel and selling it on the bookstore that would do what you're thinking about, but this particular one isn't doing it. I can tell you that.
Right. All right, good enough.
Okay.
Back to Comixology.
Maybe so.
Okay, Betty Larson, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thanks. I download Take Control books in the EPUB format. Can you discuss the difference between them and which is best for which books, if there is something like that?
Probably not, but EPUB is kind of something of an open standard for publishing books. PDFs you can use to turn anything you can print into a PDF. So I imagine they're probably going to be pretty similar. In fact, I think probably the EPUB, I'm going to just make a wild guess here. I think probably the EPUB format is probably a little bit more flexible when it comes to reading things in a Books app than a PDF file is.
I can add to that, Mike.
Yep.
An EPUB will allow you to change the text size where PDF will not.
Right.
EPUB is reflowable text. So as you, and PDF is basically fixed. Also, the notes is more, if you use an EPUB, the notes is more better, I guess you could say, or something, bookmarks and things like that. So you have more features when you use EPUB. And when I use Take Control Books, I get the EPUBs just because I can make the text larger and smaller, which is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
So.
But with that said, when you do have a reflowable EPUB, when you make the text larger, it will visually make the images look smaller, and some of the images may shift to a different page where they're no longer with the text that they should be attached
Depends
to.
on the author.
That
They
can,
can hook it up to the thing. So
they
that's
can,
to the author.
they can anchor it.
Mhm.
It just, sometimes it really depends on what, how you want to read it and what that book is. If it has a lot of pictures, if it's picture heavy and the layout, usually it's going to come in fixed layout only. But if it's a lot of text like a novel, it's going to be reflowable, so you can make the text whatever size you like, so that you can read it easier depending on, you know, your visual capability or desire. So there may not be one that can be considered better than the other. It really depends on how you want to read it and what's best for you.
Right. Yeah. It strikes me EPUBs are much more flexible. PDFs were created really to faithfully represent an image that you would print and want to distribute to somebody else by embedding things like fonts and graphics and everything, so that what you get in a PDF file is exactly what you would get if you were to print the document. And so in that sense, it's much more rigid, I would say. So it's as Sheeta says, it's going to really depend upon what it is you're reading and whether flexibility is good or not for that particular book.
Okay, thank you, all of you.
You're welcome, Betty. You're quite welcome. All right, I'm looking for other questions here. Give me 1 second, because there was a really interesting discussion here about EPUB versus PDF. But again, it depends on how you read it and what you're looking for. I want to throw in, there is an app that I have used for years by the name of iAnnotate. And I used it specifically for when I teach classes, but I find that it is a very helpful app. You can mark it up. You can go from place to place. You can put different links in it. It's just been universal and indispensable for me when I'm reading. I've owned this app for, I don't know, 10 years now. It's an incredible app, absolutely incredible. You can highlight, you can mark it up, you can add voice memos. There are all kinds of tools in this app. If you're reading in one location, you can create a like a navigation, a momentary navigation to go to where you want to read and then immediately come back. So if I want to read something, especially if it's in PDF, which I use probably 90% of the time than ebooks, I use this app to do it with. So just throwing that in there. This is something that I've used for 10 years. It's a wonderful app, something you might find useful. Thank you, Mike, for bringing that up.
Yep. Last piece I had to mention had to do with Apple user guides. If you're looking for the actual Apple user guides, get them in the Books app, right?
Oh,
you have to do a search for Apple user guide, and all come up, right? And that's the best. If you want to have a book in your hands, that's the place to go get it. And it's kind of interesting. There's an Apple user guide, I think, for just about everything, including some for some of their software products like the iWork suite. But there is no Apple user guide for the Mac, which is really surprising. I don't know why, but they just don't have one there. It's all done, online with the Mac when you're using it. But if you're looking for an Apple user guide, you can just search the bookstore for Apple User Guide, and you'll get everything you need, just about.
All right, I think we are ready for, thank you, Mike.
Okay.
So if I see Eckert is here, so Eckert wants to close out the meeting. So before Eckert closes it out, again, thanks, Mike. That was great. If everyone could unmute and thank Mike. I think that's how she always does it.
Thank you very much.
Good job. Thank you, Mike.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Great job.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation,
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike. Great job.
Mike-
Thanks for your efforts.
And Mike will be back with us next fall. So look forward to more of his presentations. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Eckert. Welcome, Eckert.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry I couldn't be there at the beginning of the presentation. I now see I missed a great part of it, of a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, Mike. That was great. You know, our organization, we have a business year, and that's the calendar year. But internally, I believe we refer to something like a season. And the season is the period of our weekly meetings from September through June. Today, this was the last of these meetings. And I was sort of saying, and some of us say, we have come to the end of our season. And I think it has been an outstanding season, very successful. We had great presentations, great speakers. I think the staff that is organizing, that's behind these meetings, like Dan and Sheeta, they do an outstanding job. I think this is just high quality, and I think we can just be proud to be able to offer this to our membership. We feel that the summer, with its heat, with its temperature and humidity, we should make a summer pause for 2 months and use it to invigorate ourselves again. And also what we are doing, I think our board is very diligent in getting ready for the next season that begins in early September. I've mentioned at the last few presentations that we are working on our website. It's going to be a fantastic update. We will launch it pretty soon, and I think it will be an excitement for our organization, for our members. We will prepare you well for this new website so that you can really enjoy it and benefit from it. What else should I say? And I really thank all of you for being members of our organization. I think without you, we wouldn't be where we are. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our members for being so loyal, being so interested, being so active and interactive. So I want to take this opportunity again to thank you, members as well as staff and the board of directors. Get ready for a great new season. It will be truly exciting. And the new website will offer much more. It will be a one-stop opportunity. We don't have to meander from let's say from YouTube to Groups.io. It will all be incorporated on just one platform, and it will be easily accessible. We will make, I think, amendments regarding payments. Some of you complain about PayPal. We will add another payment opportunity. So guys, look forward to first of all, take 2 months off, enjoy the 2 months, and look forward to rejoining our meetings come early September.